Okay, SAT students, welcome back to another live stream covering the SAT reading section. For those that are joining the live chat, or live stream rather, can you guys give me a thumbs up and let me know that you're here and that you're participating and all that good stuff. You guys can do that by giving a thumbs up or just hello in the live chat so that I know who's asking questions. If you're going to be watching the recorded version of this, which we posted immediately after we're done with the live stream, just go ahead and comment with any questions that you have below the video. And one of our teachers or tutors, for those that have watched the live streams before, one of our teachers or tutors will get back to you very quickly with any questions that you have. So hopefully that's pretty straightforward, pretty self-explanatory. As I've said in the past, for the passages 1 and 2, we're going to be covering the May 2022 SAT reading section today. So per the filming of this video, at the time of filming this video, that was a very recent test. If you took the test, great. It'll give you a really good opportunity to follow along. If you didn't, that's okay. All of the SAT reading sections are very, very similar. So if you're watching this for the first time, it'll give you a really good sense of what that passage 3 looks like. Okay, again, if you have any questions while you're watching the live stream, you can go ahead and ask those. I'll try to answer them as best as I can. If you have not already done so, please click the subscribe button below the video. We always like to see as many students as we can, obviously, subscribe to the channel. That's free of charge. And then the second thing, guys, don't forget to download Star U. I've posted that in the chat earlier. But if you've not already done so, please make sure that you do that. And I think that'll give you guys an opportunity to everything that we talk about. Star U is our app. We write all of our own material. We've put all of the content of our SAT and ACT tutorials. It looks like this, but this is the ACT. But we have an SAT tutorial. We put all of that content within the app. And again, we really encourage you guys to check that out. And yeah, and hopefully that helps you understand the strategies that we discussed during the video a little bit more. Once again, if you're joining the live stream, just give a thumbs up in the chat if you can, or a thumbs up below the video if you don't want to chat, just so that I know you can hear me, that everything's going okay. And then we'll start this passage. For those that have been watching, for those that have checked out passage 1 and 2, as we covered passage 1 and 2, you can learn more about this 20-minute drill that we do. But we basically start your timer with 20 minutes on the clock. Even though you only get 30 minutes, Iraj, welcome. Even though you only get 30 minutes, or rather 13 minutes per passage, by starting the timer with 20 minutes on the clock, one of the things that you'll find is that it lets you stop thinking about the timing. The timing is still there, but it lets you stop thinking about the timing as the end-all, be-all. And what you'll notice is that your accuracy will really improve. This is so, so critical. If you are a student out there, and there's a lot of them because we get a lot of comments on our SAT reading videos about this exact subject, if you are a student that's sitting there saying like, oh, I keep getting 2-3 questions wrong on every single reading passage, it is very critical that you try this drill. We call it the 20-minute drill, where you're going to, instead of putting 13 minutes on the clock, which forces you to be really time sensitive, time oriented, you're going to put 20 minutes on the clock like I have here. And remember, the idea is not to get to 20 minutes. The idea is instead to see how long it would take you to be 100% accurate on any given passage. And what you'll find, I think what we have right now, I think passage 1 took me 16:30, which is obviously slower than pace. Passage 2 took 15:45. If you haven't checked out our previous 2 videos, you can find that in the description below the video. Check those out. But I know that passage 4 and passage 5 for me, historically, because I've done this a lot, those 2 passages tend to go very, very quickly for me. So if I've done this drill correctly and it's something that you've practiced enough, there's no need to be worried, because when you've done this drill, you get your actual time that it took you to complete this. Of course, we're taking breaks in between, but by the end, you'll know, hey, 4 and 5 are going quickly, so there's no reason for me to stress early in the test, and this is in the real test. There's no reason if I'm a little bit behind time, because I'm 95% of the time I've taken these tests, 4 and 5 have made up that time. Does that all make sense? Any questions on that? Can you guys give me one more thumbs up if you're ready to get going, and then we'll get started here in just a second. Thumbs up in the chat. If anybody has any questions, like I said, you can ask those in the chat. And then if anybody has any questions while you're watching the recorded version of the video, just go ahead and post those below the video, and one of our teachers or tutors will be sure to answer those. Click subscribe, obviously, if you haven't already. And without further ado, passage number 3 on the May 2022 SAT reading test, questions 22 through 31. And just make sure we have all the pages. Yep, great. Okay, great. And our time starts now. Okay, perfect. Again, for those that have watched any of our SAT reading videos, you know how important I think it is to read through the entire passage. So I really, really encourage you to do that and try to map out what's going on. Don't move on from a paragraph until you really feel, hey, I understand what's going on. I was focused while I was reading. What does that mean years ago? A tiny green microbe. So just maybe, again, I like to circle adjectives. I think it's really important. Join forces with the fungus, and together they conquer the world. They have 2 cross-kingdom organisms. So fungus, coupled with an algae, a microbe. Symbiosis for 150 years. Trouble is that story is nowhere near complete. So 150 years. Sweeping genetics of lichen has revealed a third synthetic organism. Decades. The stowaway is another fungus. So 2 fungi now, I think. Yeast is molecular dating, right? Seems like an important word. So guys, basically what's happening here, I think they're talking about some type of biological, right? Passage number 3 of the SAT reading test is almost always a natural science passage, right? Something to do with actual sciences, like in this case, probably biology. They're talking about, sounds like 150 million years ago, this combination of algae and fungus. We'll see what happens after that. But again, that mapping out, that thinking about what you're actually reading while you're reading it is so critical, so that when you get to the questions, you feel really confident. Even if you don't know a question with 100% certainty, you can still kind of move on. You can still go through it without feeling like totally overwhelmed. Toby, who led the new class, sleep like one way or another for most of his life. Serious like research in grad school. Really impossible to resynthesize in the lab. So lichens are not easy in the lab. Unable to rear their test subjects in controlled environments. So I think create, right? To rear is to procreate, like in researchers have struggled. Called Native Americans would actually use this as a survival mechanism. Brioria is the name of it. This is a few years back. Tried to uncover the genetic basis for this difference. Barcoding, they were stumped. Toxics and non-toxics were identical. RNA and DNA. So contamination, right, could lead to poor experiment. Green fluorescent markers. Guys, I'm going to talk about this and how important this is. Does everybody see this? This is a difficult passage to understand what's going on. Like if you don't know what lichen is, right, or whatever they're messenger RNA, mRNA, right, or RNA or DNA. If that's not your, if you don't love reading about that, and I love to read, absolutely love to read. I love scientific. If you watch passage 2, I like science passages. This is still a difficult read. However, that's the beauty of the science passages on the SAT. Passages 3 and 5. While they may be difficult to read, you don't need to understand. Like, I'm not trying to understand how DNA refers to these 2 different fungi. The questions will not reflect that. The passages are difficult to get through, especially because they strain your brain to really pay attention and focus. But they're very, very easy questions. So just please remember that. Thumbs up if that makes sense, because it is so critical. Okay, so critical to remember that the questions are so much easier on the science passages than they are on the narrative or humanities passages, and you'll see that I'm sure in a second because it's just always the case. Sure enough, I had the markers to sample the lichen tissue, the cells of hidden fungal part, and glowed under the microscope. Maybe certain all lichen. So, right, this family. Most widespread. So this one is the most widespread. It wouldn't surprise me if they said what is the most widespread right on Earth. Like there's not enough lines. Kind of lineage is vast and ancient. It's possible to split off the average tree. Okay, that's it. Okay, so this one, the context, the main purpose of the sentence in lines 6 through 7. Let's go back to real quick. Go into the questions now. 6 and 7. Trouble is that story is nowhere near complete. I would think. Okay, yep. Advances. So guys, does this make sense? One of the most critical things, and if anybody has any questions while the live stream's going, don't hesitate to ask those. One of the most important things that you can do while you're going through this is to try to understand the science passages very broadly, right? In this case, it was talking about how the story is much more complex, and we kind of got that sense as we were listening to reading through the experiment there. So we want to think about that this story is complex, right? That's really what that's coming from, and then the whole passage talks about where that complexity comes from. So advance the argument that scientists still have much to learn about the interactions of organisms across kingdoms. Maybe, but just for the record, I'm not going to eliminate that. You always want to try to eliminate two answers. I don't like this organisms across kingdoms because it's very specific. They're talking about something very specific with the lichens, I think. Challenge the assertion that algae and fungi are especially dominant. No, definitely not. Suggest that research has generally been proceeding at too slow a pace. I don't think so. Well, that one kind of makes sense in some ways. I don't think that's the one we want to go with, and here's why. If you guys look at that type of question, you don't want to. I don't think that was. I think that it wasn't proceeding intentionally. I think it was just they didn't have the technology. I don't think that one makes sense. Introduce the idea that the most widely accepted understanding of lichens is flawed. Maybe. This is a harder. Trouble is that story is that story that they're talking about. So I think it's got to be D here for number 22. Right, that story is nowhere near complete. That being the most widely accepted understanding. Okay, I think that one's probably right. And again, always go back. That's a tough question, but they gave a specific line number. So if you're struggling with that a bit, it's okay to go back. As used in line 8, sweeping most nearly means line 8, sweeping. A sweeping genetic analysis, like a very thorough, a very extensive. It's got almost unconditional. No, it's got to be C. Right, extensive, thorough, a sweeping. I think it's talking about everything in that case. I think those ones are generally pretty easy, right? Those words in context, and I can't stress this enough. When you feel really comfortable at the reading part of the passage, you just don't get thrown off by very many questions. Like 22, I think was a pretty hard question. That one doesn't feel great. But again, it's one of those where you're just like, I think that's probably right because I understood the general passage. You just when you approach the passage as I just did, and I would encourage you, for anybody watching these videos, I would encourage you to focus on how I'm reading the passage more than the questions themselves, because that is so critical. Thinking through each paragraph and being like, okay, where are we right now? When you get to, it might take you a minute or two, right, an extra minute or two, but you don't have that feeling of just feeling overwhelmed, especially when it's a difficult passage to kind of focus like this one tends to be. Okay, in lines, right, this passage number 3, so this isn't just for this one, while this one was a little bit like that, all natural science passages are kind of difficult to stay focused. The phrase hiding in plain sight, the words eluded and stowaway, mainly serve to identify the challenge inherent in using genetic analysis. I don't think so. I don't even think I have to go back here. Characterize as a component of those undetected even during studies, maybe. Right? Highlight traits. I don't think it's highlight because this isn't highlighting. It's difficult to find these things. Hint at the likelihood that the presence will be visible. No, it's got to be B. Right? Characterize the undetected part. Right? It's that third fungus, and that's I don't have to go back because I remember them talking about that generally at the beginning. And if you use the answer choice, it's the beauty of a multiple choice test. If you use the answer choices to your advantage, why would I spend the time going back when I'm 98% sure that the answer is B there? Because I remember generally kind of what's going on there. Is that cool, guys? How much time we got? 20. Okay. Pass indicate the molecular dating allows molecular divine. I'm not going to go back until I've eliminated. So I try to do that every time. I try not to go back to the passage until I've eliminated at least 2 answers, because there's always 2 on every question. That's not just like the word, like what does this word mean? There are 2 answer choices that you should be able to eliminate if you understood the passage. Yeast has likely always been present in lichens. Maybe. Molecular dating. That the algae found in most locations in the world today have an ancient lineage. Maybe. I don't think that was really talking about that, though, was it? The origin of the Chinese first developed this. I think it's A. It's not A. It's not B. It's not the origin. I think it's A, right? I think that's the one. Yeah, that's the yeast. Yeah, I remember that word. Yeah, so that's the third fungus that the third component. I'm almost positive it's A. Yeah, because the third fungus has always been there, but they just haven't been able to detect it very well. 26, the main purpose of paragraph 5. Let's go back to the 5th paragraph. What lines is that again? 28, 33. Try to pick up the time here so we can. Impossible recent business lab. Oh, the difficulty in recent, yeah. Just questioning the thought. No. I like the amount of time required. No, because it's too difficult. It applies to maybe. Yeah, it's definitely D. That was the difficulty. That's no question. Based on the passage, the author would the most likely characterize conclusion about this. This somewhat ironic. The commonality between them instead. I think this is right because I think it was the toxic and non-toxic. Maybe B. It's not satisfying. No, because they were struggling with it. It could be D. I think it's either A or D, but because of time, guys, I'm just gonna circle that one. Don't be afraid. Of course, I'm gonna come back to 27 and 28 because I generally remember where they were talking about that. It was when it was a toxic versus non-toxic. I can't really remember what those were, but I do generally remember. Let's see if I can get through the rest of these first, so that I don't waste time on a question that I don't really remember, and I will have to go back. Which potential funding would provide the best support of the main conclusion? Researchers determined that genetic markers. Maybe. I gotta come back. Let me go back, right? Determine that it's not that one. This is at the end. Discover that 2 distinct fungi. Yeah, because I think it's this one, right? Because I think that's the one they were talking about at the end. That one's really hard. Which conclusion about this yeast is best supported? The yeast was the third fungus. It may have been absent in distant ancestors. Maybe. It may have initially developed as a result of, like, no, it's not contamination. Maybe impossible to reproduce from cultures in a laboratory setting. I don't think so. Because it was rated maybe necessary from lichens. I think it's A, and I think that we could maybe find both of these at the end here. Markers, you can be certain all lichens, only look at lichens in the most widespread, but the entire lineage is vast and ancient. It's possible somebody I've been seen. What is that? Yeah, I think it's the last one. Right. Conclusion is best supported by the passage. It may have been distant. Yeah, that's definitely it, right? That's at the end. The reason that one was 30 wasn't 30. I think is a hard question. I would imagine it's a hard one. But the reason I got that one is because I'm 95% sure that's right because I read it last. Okay, let's go back to 27 here. Based on that, most likely characterizes team's conclusion about RNA as somewhat. So RNA, I remember where this was. It was like right up here. Yeah, because I circled it right. discovered something amazing. We found that there was this third thing, writing along every single sample, referring to the previously. First, researchers worried that there would be contamination, common pitfall. I don't. Okay, so it's definitely A here. I think it's A. And the reason I say it's A is because it says ironic. I think that when you look at that question, right, irony is, it says it's amazing, and it's amazing because they weren't puzzling, right? These are all okay, but if you look at the second part, ironic because they were the same, right? The toxic and non-toxic were the same. To isolate and identify between the two, like it's really commonality between them, which is the toxin and non-toxic one, where it has still had the same thing. And I just think that that tone is right. First, researchers worried that I'm stuck with my shoot. I know that there was this third thing right now. It's either one of these two. I think it's. I think it's C, which is the one that's just before 70 and 72. All right, just for time's sake, I'm going to stop there. So it looks like we're right about the 4-minute mark. So 16 minutes. So guys, that was hard, right? That's a hard passage, and you're going to see. So before I do anything related to the grading, I think that's a hard passage, right? So if you look at this, this says 16 minutes, right? So I want to point this out, and so we took us 16 minutes, right? I finished right around the 4-minute mark. And what I want you guys to be aware of, does that make sense how we approach that? If you add this up, this is so critical, and this is why this drill can be so helpful, okay, especially for students that feel like they're struggling with time. If we add all of these up, right, it's roughly 16 minutes. We're talking about we're at the 48-minute mark, okay? We're at the 48-minute mark. And obviously, that means that we have to go pretty quickly on these last two passages. Now, could I have gone faster if I wasn't talking? And maybe, but let's not use that as an excuse. Basically, I have to finish these last two passages in 17 minutes. But this is the thing that everybody forgets, and I cannot stress this enough, is every student goes in, if you're a really high-level student and you're thinking, I got to get a 1600, that is the wrong approach. It's not to say that you can't get that, but if you do that and you find yourself in this position, right, if everything doesn't go perfectly for me on the last two passages, it's unlikely that I'm going to be able to do both of those in 8.5 minutes. I'd have to be flying. Now, occasionally that happens. Occasionally the first three, or for whatever reason, you just lock into those last two, and that comes with some luck, right? Thumbs up, guys, if that makes sense. There is some luck involved in terms of the idea of the passages. But what I really want to point out to all of you is that I can definitely do these last two passages because I've done this drill. I know they're going to be my best passages. We haven't seen the history passage yet. That's the one I like to read the most. That's not for most students, but then you would have made up time earlier. These two passages are always my best passage if 4 is the history passage. And in this case, it is because 2 was not history, right? So 4, I'm going to move quickly. But let's just say, like, 4 takes me 10, let's say it takes me 10 minutes, right? Passage number 4, or 11 minutes. That would leave me with 6 to 7 minutes left at the end for this one. If I have 6 to 7 minutes, does everybody see that if I'm accurate all the way through, at this point in the test, I would be like 42 maybe out of 52, something like that. And then as I go right to the final questions of the test, and I get 5 more of those right, now all of a sudden I'm at 47 out of 52, and I can guess the rest of the way down. That is such a so at worst, I'm sitting in a situation where I have to guess on the last 5 if I run out of time. That's still an incredible score, right? 47 out of 52 plus maybe 2 more questions. Now we're talking 49 out of 52. Man, would it be great to go in feeling like I could get 49 every time? And then, hey, if I get a little lucky on these last 2 passages and I just love to read them, I love the content, I love what the questions are asking, which is possible, I'll fly through those and maybe I do get 52 out of 52. But the point of this drill is to show you that it is okay to be 5 minutes over time as you practice, or 10 minutes over time as you practice, so that you can start to narrow those things down. Right, that you can get a little bit better instead of thinking I have to be 13 minutes on every passage every time, and if I'm not, I'm failing. That is the wrong way to approach the practice. By setting the timer at 20 minutes and going down from there and then recording your times, trying to figure out, hey, where are my best passages? Where are my worst passages? That's going to give you such a great sense of the real test because you're not going to worry when you're in the real thing. Of course, once you get to a certain point, you want to start doing the full length test, right? This isn't what you're going to do all the time. But I would say that anybody that's watching this, if you haven't done this before, for at least the next, let's say 2 to 3 reading sections that you complete, if you're completing a practice section, the next 2 to 3 should be done in this manner if you haven't done it before. And I guarantee, without a shadow of a doubt, your score will go up on your next full-length practice reading section when you take it all at once because of this ability to stay calm and to recognize where you are in the test without having a massive freak out. Most students that we've seen that don't do this, they see 17 minutes on the clock and they immediately think, I have to rush, I'm so far behind time, I'm not going to. Wrong approach, right? You see 17 minutes left on the clock. Hey, you're going to get, and especially if you know which passages are your best passages, hey, I'm going to get one of these passages done and I'm going to get them all right. And then let's see how long that takes me. Maybe it's not my best day and I get 47 out of 52 done, but I get all 47 of those right because I'm focused on accuracy because I know where I am in the test. And then I guess on the last 5, I get one or two more of those right. Now I'm at 48, 49 out of 52 on a bad day. Right? Think about that. 48, 49 out of 52 on a bad day. That's a great place to be if you feel really strongly about reading and you just can't figure out that accuracy portion because you're constantly worried about the time. Okay, thumbs up, guys. That's the most important thing. And in some ways, it's great that we have a chance to be in this point with the timing for passages 4 and 5 so I can hopefully show you on those next videos how not to rush, essentially, right? So let me let me see if I can pull up the answers here. Just usually search the answers on like Google, type them in, type in the test form for any of these tests. It doesn't just have to be this one. All right, let's see here. Okay. So number 1 was D, great. 22 was D. 23 was C. 24 was B. Okay, yep, that one I didn't feel great about. 25 was A. Felt good about that one because I ended up seeing that it was yeast. 26 was D. 27 was A. 27 was A. 28 was C. That one ended up being easier than I thought because of that word ironic. I tried to eliminate based on those tone words before I got worried about what they were saying. 29 was D. 30 was A. And 31 was D. Yeah, so again, guys, right now, I haven't missed any questions. So even though it's taken me 48 minutes, wouldn't it feel great to be 31 out of 31 without having that sense of overwhelming feeling? If on passage 4, I get 11 more questions right, now all of a sudden I'm at 42 out of 42, and suddenly there's so much less pressure on the last passage. Even if I run out of time, I really only have to get half of the questions right. And the great thing about the reading section, the fact that it's the hardest section makes most students feel a little overwhelmed. For you, you don't have to feel that way because if you get 42 out of 42 and then you get the next 5 right and guess on the last ones, 48, 49, reading has the best curve for students as well. So missing 3 or 4 questions on most reading tests is probably like minus 20, minus 30 points maybe. And then the other 3 sections of the test, writing and language and the 2 math sections, those are all rules-based sections. So you can really you could theoretically go into those 3 getting 100% every time if you just know all the concepts. Reading is not quite that way. It's much more strategy-based and kind of a focus-based and not getting too overwhelmed. And that's really what these videos are trying to convey more than anything. Because then on the other 3 sections, hey, I got let's say on a bad day I get 370 out of 400 points on reading, and then I get every other question right on the rest of the test. That's at the absolute highest level is to get to the 1600. Hey, 1570, 1550 is an incredible score to know and feel confident. Now, if that's not you, if you're struggling a little bit and you're struggling with the reading section completely, hey, if it took you 62 minutes, but you got 31 questions right, and you guessed the rest of the way down, but on your last practice reading test you only got 28 questions right, well, if you got 31 and you guessed, you're going to get 37, maybe 38 right with the guessing letter, right, with a guessing letter. Now all of a sudden you're 10 questions higher by just focusing on accuracy. And that's what I want more than anything from all of you, is that as you're practicing for the reading section, it is absolutely critical to be focused on accuracy above timing, with timing being just kind of a secondary thought until you prove you can get a lot of these questions right. All right, guys. So again, I hope all of this. I'm trying to keep these videos to around 30 minutes. So I hope this helped. That's passage number 3 from the May 2022 U.S. SAT reading test. If you have any questions and you didn't get a chance to join the live stream, you can ask those questions below. Thumbs up for anybody that's watching live. Hopefully that all made sense. If you have any final questions, I'm happy to answer those quickly here at the end. Otherwise, again, you can always post those, and one of our teachers or tutors, and probably including myself, can answer those in the comment section. But other than that, guys, again, stay tuned for passage number 4 and passage number 5, as well as the rest of the coverage for the entire SAT May 2022 test. You can find the full playlist for this particular exam form in the video description below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Download Star U, our tutoring platform, which explains all of these concepts in even greater detail than I was able to in that quick video today. Otherwise, we hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll see you for the next live stream, and don't hesitate to ask us any questions. Thanks, guys. Thanks for supporting the channel and for tuning in today. Thanks.